ish idea I've got for today. So it's basically late at night, but no worries, guys. I've got some fun plans. So here's the gist of today's vlog. It's going to be a little bit more of kind of a photography vlog, which you might want to call it a walkthrough Wednesday, but it's not quite a walkthrough Wednesday. It's a little bit more photography based. So if you are not interested in photography or lighting or any of that fun stuff, I'll see you guys tomorrow if you would like to learn a little bit more about it. Now let's get a few things clear here. I, for the record, am by no means a photography expert, and this whole new strobe thing that I'm into is very new and alien to me, and I am learning a lot about it myself. We have a good friend who actually watches the vlog, Jeff Kravitz, who is up in New York, and I've taken a few lessons from him and learned a few things, and I'm trying to apply it more and more as much as possible. So today I'm going to walk you through self-portrait because I have no one else to shoot me. And I took some yesterday, but I'm going to try to do it a little bit differently. So some of you may have known the story that when I ordered all my strobe lights, they were out of the Sony transmitter for the lights I bought, and it's back ordered. I still have it ordered, but I went ahead and just bought a Canon one because I do own a Canon as my vlogging camera, and right now I'm back on my old Sony camera, which is just going to be the vlog for today since I'm just hanging around here in the studio. What I typically shoot on is this 17 to 55 Canon USM, and it's not a great lens, I'm not going to lie guys. It's pretty soft in my opinion. I'm not crazy about it. It's not very sharp by any means at all. The pictures I took yesterday, I shot with a 50 f1.8, loved them, great lens. It matches very well with a 5D Mark IV. I've seen even people use it on a 1DX Mark II. That cheap nifty 50 plastic piece of crap works very well. But today, what we're going to be doing is swapping out this vlogging lens, this 17 to 55, which again, like I said, for studio stuff and detailed work, it's just not great. Because let me explain something real quick. Since I'm doing self-portraits, I'm going to try to keep everything within hand's reach of myself. So that way I don't have to worry too much about focus. Because focus is going to be the biggest problem that I have to deal with. And the biggest problem with focus is that you can't use autofocus at all, because by the time you go to sit down, it won't be continuous and it'll stutter and you're not going to get in focus. So it's better to just set it to manual and then find that position and go. Now, here's how I do it. But first, let me tell you about the lens I'm going to be using. This is an Optica 85mm f1.8. Now, since I'm using strobe lightings, I'm actually going to run this up to an f10. So, I mean, you can see how wide this gets. I mean, it goes all the way down to a 1/8. It's pretty fast. But since we're using strobes, I'm going to go down to an f10 or an f6. I don't know why there's such a big gap between that. There's no f7, 8, or 9 at all. So I'm going to start at f10 and we'll see if this works. So I've used this lens for a few studio shoots with Ashley in the past, but not a whole lot, and I've never used it with strobes. Now the good thing about this lens is it's just a manual lens, so I don't need to worry about, the focus distance too much. Now here's the other great thing about shooting at a higher f-stop. When you shoot at a higher f-stop, you don't have to worry about focus too much, just for the simple fact that your focus distance is now increased. So if I'm shooting at an f1.8, my focus distance might be this much, which means, for instance, my nose could be out of focus, but my eye is in focus. It's very shallow, very, very shallow. The higher I increase that f-stop, the more distance I'm going to get. So at an f10, I should have a fair amount in focus and not have to worry about it too much. The other great thing is with continuous lighting, if you look closely at my pupils here, you can probably see they're pretty small. But it'll be dark in there, and then by the time the light flashes, you're going to catch me with my pupils nice and wide opened. So let's head in there now. Now, the first thing that I do need to do is clean up this studio. So let's get that taken care of. I don't know how you do this. Okay, we are all set up, guys. So let's come on over here, and I gotta shut this light off. So there's a few ways that you can actually do this. So these cameras have built-in model lights, and so basically if you're shooting in a totally dark room, the problem is it's totally dark, and that's a problem because you can't really see what's going on. So a lot of times they leave little model lights on, which are dim enough to where they don't affect the pupil, but still bright enough to where you can kind of see a little bit of a glow in what's going on. And then when they flash, wait for it, they get really bright. And that's only half the intensity on this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and dim the model lights down. That's at 100%. I'm going to dim them down to 50%. Right here. 50, just so it's a little bit darker. And that way we really get the full effect of everything that's going on. Here's our camera setup right here. Well, you know what, let's get a little cinematic B-roll going on it.
But something changed and so did we. Now I can't set aside, I can't just be and let me.
So, let's just go ahead and take a few shots and let's see what we get. Okay, so I just took a look at the images and I like where it's heading, but I want to play around with it a little bit more. So for this, I'd like to have a little bit more of a dramatic setup. Now, if you notice the background, it's completely white. Now, this second flash right over here is whitening out my background, and that's fine just because I like it to blow it out so that way you cover up some of the wrinkles and stuff. It's easier to deal with in post, but I want it to have a little bit more of a gray tone. So I'm going to lessen the intensity of this lens right here all the way down to 3.5. That should help and give me a little bit more of that grayish background that I'm looking for. Now let's talk about this modifier that I have on this strobe. Now this is called a beauty dish. And all a beauty dish does is kind of make the strobe look like the sun's going through an eclipse almost. You know, it takes out this harsh light and it's using all this kind of softer light with it. The reason why I love a beauty dish for a close-up is anytime you're doing close-up, you're going to actually see the shape of the modifier in the person's eyes. Now if I used a soft box, which is a square, at least the one I have, they make octaboxes and circle boxes and different shapes, but I only have a square one. And in some of the pictures I shot with Ashley and with myself, I didn't like the square vibe that much. So I'm gonna go for more of this circular round one. But I want it to be a little bit more dramatic because I'm going to be making the background a little more gray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this strobe a little closer and raise it up and shoot a little bit more down. That's going to bring the light just shooting over my head just a little bit more. And let's see what kind of looks we get now. So this is definitely a bit more dramatic and definitely what I'm looking for. However, this is still kind of white in the background, so I'm going to lessen this even more. Took that down to 2.5. That should definitely gray out the background. Now, one thing I'm also thinking I'm going to do is I want a little bit more headroom. So I'm going to move from this 85mm to this 50mm, which will give me just a little bit more space and room to play with. The downside is I'm going to have to refocus everything. Here's a little trick that I'm going to show you guys on how to go ahead and get everything in focus. So luckily I have a stool here, so all it is I threw in this little light stand, and if you look closely here in the camera you'll see that it's exactly where I'm going to be sitting. So all I'm going to do is flip this over to autofocus and we'll focus right in on that light stand. Switch it back over to manual. Now obviously my head is not the size of this light post, so you might be like, well, your depth of field's going to be off. Well, if I was shooting at an f1.8, then yes, it would be. But I'm shooting at f8 right now, so it shouldn't be a problem. Now, let's take a look at the images.
It's not that I don't love you anymore, but I can't love you like before.
This is definitely the look that I'm going for, but I still want the background just a little bit more gray. So like I'm going to take this down to almost invisible, almost non-existent, going down to 2. That's as low as it can possibly go. And let's see if we get more of this darker feel that I'm going for.
How you do this? It's a game that you can't win.
So there you have it, guys. I think that I'm getting the look that I really want, and I think it's fairly good. I'm pretty happy with it. Self-portraits are really tricky, and here's why. So for me, who's someone who has not had a lot of experience shooting with strobes as self-portraits, I would say that there were 2 things that stood out to me. One was the focus, setting up that focus and making sure it was tack sharp. it's a little tricky at times, and unless you're shooting at a very high f-stop, you really got to make sure it's in focus, because you want to get those eyes just right. Because you'll see that anytime, any hack will comment and say like, oh, it's out of focus, your eyes are out of focus. It's super annoying. And then two, the other reason is composition. So for instance, I was setting a timer and then I'm running back to my chair and then taking the seat. And you know, like you have to like adjust yourself and then sit down, make sure the framing is just right, and then pose. And it's just a little difficult. It's a lot to think about. And while the timer's running, it's kind of like the bomb is about to explode. So you don't have a lot of time to focus on your pose or the composition of where you want your eyes to be centered in the frame, or if your head's if there's too much head space or not enough, or you're chipping your head off, or if your chin needs to be this way. Also, you don't know where the light is going to be. So for instance, in studio shoots, a lot of times you'll see a photographer actually like pose the model down to the absolute detail, because they know that this can mean that the light is hitting like right here and casting a slight shadow, as opposed to this to where now the light's exposed on the cheek. Small little things like that, that when you're doing self-portraits, you can't really pay attention to or have time to pay attention to, because even if you try to replicate the pose, it's always going to be somewhat off. So it's just some things to think about. Anyway guys, super happy with today's vlog. You know, I wasn't too bummed out with this Okeka 85 f1.8. It fared pretty well with the strobes, I think. I didn't see too much chromatic aberration, which I noticed last time I shot it full wide open, but I was shooting around f6 on this, and I think all the images came out pretty well with it. They seemed pretty tack sharp to me. So if you're looking for a nice, cheap, affordable lens, I'll link that down below where I got that on Amazon. It was pretty affordable. I think it was under 100 bucks. It should be. Anyway guys, that's where I'm going to end the vlog today. I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Normal vlog, no photography tips, just fun stuff happening. See you guys. Here's your wind up, Billy. See you guys tomorrow.